excited that she's. We had 4 back-to-school nights. Maine, Taylor, and Glenwood had it before school, and great turnouts. And then Robla had a great turnout that Thursday after school started. And then, fortunately, we can't make those tonight.
Let's move on to board member reports. I'll start with Trustee Glenn.
Nothing this time.
Trustee Cardona.
Nothing this time.
Trustee Hamilton Stark.
Nothing at this time.
And Trustee Barr.
Real quickly, I found out earlier this week. Also, that there will not be no motions coming through before the nomination of Sanford candidate to us for the election.
Congratulations on a hard-fought race. And I have nothing to report. And that is now going to bring us to presentations and information and the Robla School District Facilities Workshop.
And I just wanted to make note, this is a workshop, not a board meeting, so at any time during the presentation, if anyone on the board or the audience has questions, then you can ask it, and we'll stop and we'll ask questions. So this is it can be an interactive presentation. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Hickey, who is one of the advisors for the district.
Thank you, Superintendent Jen, Board President of the Trustees. Prior to most of you coming into the room, myself and Member Devine, Trustee Devine, President DeLuce was engaged in very robust conversation. And I have a past with both of them. So it fed into us having, great conversations. This board workshop is designed to be the same. It should be a robust conversation. It's your workshop. The more questions you ask, lets me know that the things that you really want to know are being addressed, are being answered. My presentation is just a place to engage conversation. But this is about the things that the board feels that they want to know. My information will be augmented by Superintendent Chen and also by your CBO. Things that are specific to their wheelhouse, if you will, a deeper dive into budgeting and things of that nature. They'll chime in where they see fit. So again, this is designed to be a robust conversation. The more we talk outside of the presentation, the more we get out of it. Can we? And for me, this is really threefold. Some of it is historical information, because when we go back to your most current 5-year master plan, which is 2019, there were board members who are here now that was not there then. So some of it is historical. Then we'll have the conversation about facilities in this current space and what possibly could be the beginning conversation of a new 5-year master plan. Your current master plan had a date of 2014 as 2024 as its end date. So we're looking at going forward, what does the next 5 years look like facilities wise for the district? And lastly, I'll say a board workshop should also be informative and educational. And if I do my job correctly, then it'll be all of that. Okay. Facilities master planning with an equity focus. This is just a brief history of Robla School District. The modern day Robla School District started out as the Oak Grove School District, organized in the early 1890s and opening on August 11th, 1896. There were 12 students. The local residence, station, and post office were referred to as Robla and therefore caused confusion for residents and potentially home buyers as they were Oak Grove School District, as to where Oak Grove School District was located. To avoid confusion, the district changed the name, so we have Robla. And for those of you who may or may not know, Robla is really just Spanish for a grove of oak trees. And that's where we get the symbol in Robla, is a grove of oak trees. The district mission statement. The mission of the Robla School District is to provide safe, caring, peaceful place where every student is able to succeed in learning a balanced core curriculum. So the focus of this workshop is safe, because safe primarily has to do with your facilities and the facilities that we bring students into on a daily basis. There's a nice image of Robla School District, Robla Elementary School, which is next door. Some of you may know what that school district used to look like. Raise your hand if you remember what that school looks like before. I see you smiling, sir. All right. We remember, don't we? All right. And so many of the board members, the majority of you were here when we started that work. And so the work has been tremendous. So we're going to talk about that work as well. So we'll start with Measure H. That's where a lot of this began. A $46 million bond that was passed by the voters in 2018, in November, with a narrative that said the school district would reconstruct Robla, Bell, and Taylor schools, modernize Glenwood, modernize classrooms to 21st century standards, upgrade lighting, windows, heating, ventilation systems, make the district eligible to compete for additional grants, improve student safety and security. So the board member in this district, you should give yourselves a hand because you've done that with that money, correct? So give yourself a hand. All right. So you told the voters this is what you were going to do, and that's what you did. All right. Main has been modernized. Robla has been modernized. Bell Avenue has been modernized. Glenwood and Taylor did not get as much of exterior aesthetics, but all the classrooms have been modernized to 21st century standards. Right. And the district has made itself eligible for more state grants. Right. And just take a quick look at that particular slide. Right. That's a gorgeous overview of Bell Avenue. And these are some of the highlights of what this district has done with the grant money, not the grant money, the general bond, facilities bond that the voters gave you in 2018. You have right-sized 3 of your schools. There's still some classrooms that need to be provided for 2 of your schools and some other things that we'll talk about later.
Yeah, it's Robla, not Bell. Yeah, that's
I was testing you. Right? I was testing you. I did say Bell, didn't I? That's Robla. So let's talk about the current facilities projects that are underway. Right. At Bell Avenue, there's a pre-construction of a new preschool. So that's underway. Right now, the contractors are working on the foundation. They're building the footings, and the modular building contractor is busy building the classrooms itself. The classrooms are built off-site, and they will come in as modulars, and they will be positioned on the foundation once the foundation is set. So currently we meet every Thursday as the owner, architect, construction firm meeting to discuss that project. You're also beginning to work on the Main Avenue project. It's still in design and planning. That is designed to give you 6 new classrooms over at Main Avenue for early childhood education. Also, your CBO realized that within the LOP grant, there was additional funding that had not been utilized. And he smartly decided that let's have a facilities impact. So shade structures are coming in at 4 of the sites. New playgrounds are coming in at 3 of the sites. And play fields are being resurfaced at the Robla Elementary School District. So that's currently what's been planned and underway with your facilities. and I suspect this is going to be the bulk of this conversation as we get more into it. What are your current facilities needs? And this document comes from a series of conversations I've had with your new superintendent and your current CBO around what they see currently as the needs. That five-year facilities master plan was what the needs were in 2019. As you can imagine, as we come through COVID, a lot of other market-driven conditions in 2024 going into 2025, some of your current facilities needs are a departure from what they were 5 years ago. Go ahead.
One of the things that I'd like to make sure that we're doing going forward is almost like making this a rolling 5-year master plan. So we should be doing at least one workshop like this every year, so that we're updating the master plan, so that we always know 5 years out where we're at, what our needs are, what we've gotten done this year. And I know we had talked about that, and we just never quite got around to doing it because we were so busy doing stuff. But now I think we're at a pace where we can both plan and do at the same time.
President DeLuz, you have made your superintendent happy. That's exactly what she wants. And as an advisor, that's what I have recommended that the district does. It should be rolling. We kind of got out of that, President DeLuz, when the state decided not to fund a deferred maintenance program. The rolling 5-year facilities master plan used to be a requirement when the state was funding the projects. When they relaxed funding, Fund 14, I think it's called Fund 140 now, they decided that it's an option. And most school districts went with the option not to do it because it was a burden, because typically the 5-year master plan, you hire a design team and you paying, last one I was involved with, to have that master plan conducted was upwards of $2 million. And that was the largest school district, but it was a way to save money by not doing the 5-year master plan.
Yeah, one of the challenges with us with doing that was literally before, when it was a requirement, we had so much deferred maintenance that it was less about planning and it was more about, okay, we got to fix what's the least broken thing or the most broken thing, the thing we got to fix now.
Absolutely.
And so it's good that we're not there, but it doesn't mean that we're not there anymore. I just want to make sure we don't ever get back to that.
I'm glad you said that because a lot of this work was done under your past superintendent, Ruben. And he and I traveled together at conferences, and we would give this presentation together. I would always ask him to join me when he had time. He was always quick to say, before these projects came about to restore, replace, reconstruct, his toughest time to come to work was in the morning when he had to walk into a facility that he knew was not suitable based on 21st century standards. And so that's why we was happy to do the work with him. Some of you know that I'm a former vice president of Caldwell, CFW, Caldwell Flores and Winters, who's doing a lot of your work now. So I have that history with the district. And that's one of the things that Ruben spoke of with passion at some of those conferences where we spoke, is how the work was personal to him because the place became a district where he was proud to come to work in once he and the board did the work of right sizing all the facilities. Let me go back. The last two bullets on this slide is a good place for the current board to park thoughts as we go forward. It has to do with the panhandle. Geraldo just completed a study with the Davis demographics, and they're projecting that the panhandle, when completely built out, is going to add 222 students to your district. That estimate a future need of 9 additional classrooms. And that 9 additional classrooms is too small for the state of California to authorize a new school. So what can the district do to prepare for the estimate of 227 students? How do you add those 9 classrooms? And within this workshop, myself and Superintendent Chen and Geraldo has devised a set of options for the board to start to consider. And I'll say this, I forgot to say this in the beginning. This is meant to be just an initial workshop. The superintendent is planning some subsequent workshops to where some of these ideas can be more vetted out.
Is this a good opportunity for me to go a little bit more in detail? Is that okay?
Absolutely.
So, as we look at the facility needs, right, I wanted to just explain a little bit of each bullet from my perspective, right, and what my thoughts were planned. When I look at Taylor Elementary, right, why it's important to add new schools, because right now Taylor is at a point where their enrollment is almost capped. They only have one available classroom. So their students, I wrote it down here. Not write it down. Do you remember? 129. So there's this current school year, there are 129 students whose homeschool is Taylor, and they attend one of our other schools because Taylor can't accommodate 129 students, right? So what I learned is years ago there were 10 portables at Taylor, and it was replaced by 5, right? So again, that's 5 less classrooms that we had the opportunity to build that school. And then there's 2 additional classrooms that are no longer available for students. So again, that's another, if I take all those classrooms and I times it by 30 students, that's about 210 students that Taylor had capacity to have, but they do not, right? So how do what can we do to ensure that students who live in that area who want to go to their home school have the ability to attend their school? In terms of Glenwood, right, I would love for, we have our DLI program there. I would love to solidify that program and have 2 grade levels for each, or 2 classes for each grade level. Currently, there's only 1 TK DLI class, and then 2 for first, second, third, and then when we get to the upper grades, there's some combo classes. But if we have the ability to open another TK DLI class, then the cohort can carry all the way through 6th grade, right? And that's how you can ensure that that program stays stable with the students and they can finish it and be prepared to be, biliterate. It's biliterate at the high school. And Taylor right now has 0 available classrooms. They actually have one of their enrichment teachers that is mobile. She is, we call her art in a cart. She has to go to those classrooms because she does not have a dedicated classroom that can accommodate for her to provide enrichment services. Bell Elementary, I think, Ms. Hall has always shared with the construction of her new 2-story building, it really took some of her play area space, right? And she's going to advocate, she wants it back, right? And so I know she has a lot of field, right? But I know she would want adequate, more space that was taken from construction for her students. When it comes to Taylor's, Taylor and Bell, well, I'm gonna go back to Taylor again. We know Taylor's kitchen is super small and needs some attention, right? And it could have been when in previous years, the central kitchen could have been the solution, right? And I just want to have this conversation because if we move forward with the central kitchen, right, then I want to make sure that the needs at Taylor, are still met. Because just because we have a central kitchen doesn't mean that current facilities as Taylor is what we want for our students and families. And same for Bell in terms of new kitchen, cafeteria, or MPO. Going back to Taylor, I'm sorry, Taylor's cafeteria, right, does not have the capacity to have their whole school at one time. I believe they have 3 lunch sessions, if not 4, because they can't accommodate all the students at one time. So, that's one of the things I would love to get to. What's that? And then Robla, I know, Mr. Barnes, you mentioned, can we have that one area that needs a paint job, just so it looks like it's part of that school? Absolutely. And so as we move forward in the presentation, and I apologize for missing it, as we move forward, we know with the student projections for the Panhandle, right now it's at 227 classes, right? And so it's estimated at 9 additional classrooms. Do we currently have that in our district? The answer is no. I think there might be 3 that's available at Robla Elementary and one at Taylor. Taylor uses that one classroom for their restorative justice, their MTSS room. So I would say we could have 4 classrooms available to accommodate to 227. And I know we have some portables that are not used as classrooms right now at Main Avenue. But this is where the conversation I want to have. So like Mr. Hickey said, this is the first time advisory, just so we can start thinking and I can get direction from you on what we do.
And that's why I have central kitchen highlighted in yellow with a question mark in 2 different places. Again, previous decision was made within this most current 5-year master plan. And that was a decision that was made when it was made. There are current needs, such as 9 classrooms, and how best to spend those dollars. We'll get into the budget piece a little bit later to help you understand what facilities dollars are available. But now the question becomes for this current board, do you continue to move forward with the central kitchen knowing that you need 9 classrooms because the panhandle is coming? We have just received some information that we believe is very credible, that there are enough applications at the county where builders go to register for construction projects, that residential homes are coming. So therefore, if they're coming, does the district prepare to capture that ADA so that your budget goes up? And that's going to be dependent upon your future capacity. Or do you continue with the central kitchen project, or do you renovate Taylor as an example and come up with a different plan for child nutrition, which currently, I will say, I've been in the district for about 2 years now. The current child nutrition staff does an excellent job with the facilities that they have now. That's something to keep into account as well. Eric and her team does a good job with current facilities. And so what's the current need for a central kitchen as related to, you got to balance it off for the classroom needs as well. So keep that in mind as you start to ask your questions and as we speak on that. So good argumentation, Superintendent Chan. All right. Just gonna let everyone read that slide for a minute. Talks about why do we build facilities in the first place? What's the impact on school facilities on student achievement? This is why the district embarked upon this path in 2018. Sometimes it's easier to let you read it than to try to listen. All right. The second one, what's the impact on new facilities in neighborhoods? It has an impact. What this district has done thus far has had a major impact on neighborhoods. And all of this makes sense. Sometimes it's really good to just read it. Okay. Thought you had a question, Noreen. In all the conversations I've had with Superintendent Chan and the CBO, this slide really demonstrates in a narrative their current commitment. Robla School District will research resources, outline strategies, implementation facilities, activities that when taken together will promote educational equity through smart facilities planning while also fostering diversity, pursuing equity in every function of facilities planning. Specifically, Robla School District will generate financial options, facility solutions necessary to achieve real and positive change on issues associated with educational equity. Any questions on that? Member Divine, what school is that? Okay.
No,
Well,
my bad.
So now you make me feel good.
Yes. It looks like they. No. Oh, it's on Main Street, but it's all at no. That's okay. No.
And here are things for the board to consider. Going forward into creating that new rolling 5-year master plan. Current district needs. All right. Your current 5-year master plan has a due date at the end of this school year. What master plan did you put together for the next 5 years? Age and condition of existing facilities. Many of us remember what those facilities look like. And I think we all agree upon we should be making every effort to ensure that those schools never return to those conditions. That's why your 5-year facilities master plan is critical. All right. Projected student enrollment. We spoke with the panhandle. Some of the things that Superintendent Chin and your new director of early childhood education, what they've done at the preschool, they're expecting enrollment to increase. When enrollment increases at the preschool level, it eventually impacts all grade levels, and so you will see that enrollment trend. What model of construction do you use going forward? A lease-back agreement or design bid build? We were in a space where we felt lease-back was the best way to go. We felt that it was cheaper. That's not necessarily the case, and I want the board to understand that. It's not necessarily the case, because there's a reason why federally and statewide there's a low bid process. Just before COVID, the square foot cost of building the new school was around $700. It is now over $1,400 per square foot. And in 5 to 6 years, the cost to build a public school has doubled. That's almost criminal, right? It has doubled under the lease-back. So keep that in consideration as you move forward on how you bring construction into an agreement, because I still feel that bidding projects out is where you get your best price. And these are other things to consider. One of the things I want to have everyone focus on for a minute are the professional services. And later on, we'll use the current preschool project as an example. There are some challenges within that project that are synonymous with a project that has low value to it. That project is valued at roughly $5 million. Not enough money in it for everybody, for anyone. The project management firm gets 4.5%. The architect firm gets a small percentage. The contractor, general contractor, their contract is worth about $2 million. There's not enough money in it for them to really make a profit. You're looking at only 5 to 8%. That's if they finish on schedule. And so when you have projects this small, you don't get the A team. And if you do get some members of an A team, you don't get an A effort. And so we see this in one of your current projects, where I'm also advising, is that there's a constant narrative around, is the district getting what it's paying for? We're beginning to question everyone's effort. And I'm from that space. I was in construction for 30 years. I understand that construction firms do not give you their best effort when there's no money for them to be made. All right? So keep that in mind. So when you go into your next projects, who will be this new team you put together, to facilitate construction. You have a general contractor that's been in your district for a long time. They're loyal. Right now, they're not making any money out of this project. All right. And so if you take 4.5% of 5 million, what is that, roughly $250,000? That's barely a person's salary for the year in this business. So what are these firms really chasing when they chase these smaller projects, right? And sometimes when you find projects that are really challenged, that's why there's not enough money for them. And so therefore, you get their last effort and not their best effort. So consider that as you do projects going forward, that value of that project, you can package projects together to attract different players. Now, I spoke of at the meeting today of a particular design firm. When you're at this level, within architecture and construction, you have A-level design teams, you have B-level design teams, and you have C-level design teams. So when you're a small school district and you're doing a small project, what level of design team do you think you'll attract? C-level. Right. And if you get C-level, because that's all you can afford, that's all you can attract, you still want an A effort, don't you? Right? In this particular case, we're looking at a C-level design team that's given a C effort, and it doesn't work for the district. Right? And so those are some of the things that I'm asked to look at, how better prepare the district. And that's just an honest, transparent conversation. Small school district, small project, you get C-level design teams. You may not be able to change that, but how do you get a effort out of them? Any comments, questions? This is a quiet crowd. And this is more of an educational piece for the board. I don't know what everyone's experience is with facilities projects, but there's project management in general. Every project in general has 5 phases. So in the facilities, it's no different. There are 5 phases to every project. You got to justify the need. 227 students coming in. You need 9 classrooms. Was California Department of Education approved that school? No. But when you start to bust out of the seams and you have enough students that are crowded and portables, and you have space, and you need a classroom, a school for 500 students, that's justification. District gets approval, you qualify for state funding, you get extra money to help build that school. The next phase is getting the funding, designing, planning. Then you build your facility. Next phase is monitoring and inspecting. In the state of California, if you're going to use state funding, you have to go through DSA, Division of State Architects, and you have to use an inspector of record. But most folks do not know, you don't have to use DSA. You don't have to use an inspector of record. It's when you use your own money. There's very few school districts in the state of California that has the endowment to where they don't need state money. Palo Alto is one. Palo Alto has never built a school through the state system because they have the endowment of Stanford itself. They have billions in because folks die and just leave them their wealth. So Palo Alto never uses state funding, so they don't have to go through this process. But for most of us, we use state funding, so you have to inspect, you have to audit the budget, and then the last stage is close out. If you don't close the project out, if you try and do something at that address again, the state denies the application because you have a project that's still open. Of those 5 phases, I'm going to ask each board member, which one, in your opinion, did you believe is the most important? One says funding. First. Justification. They are all important. You have to complete all phases, but in my opinion, there's one that's more important than the other ones. And there's reasons why some of your projects are struggling now.
Close out. Exactly. Or who, like, who have ideas, but if so, like, you just made me think about how we hope that the folks who are working in our schools are passionate, like, they aren't just out to make a dollar, but they're actually passionate about making schools equitable and building schools and making things for our communities that will continue to grow.
Mhm.
I hope that people have that investment, but I understand we are the doctor, so.
Funding, design, planning. Because what happens if planning and design fails you? Because I said earlier, you're going to get sea level, correct? If you're going to start out with sea level, if they do not give you a good enough plan for the contractor to construct, what happens to you on a daily basis, Geraldo? When planning has failed, what's the three letters you hate the most that runs up your budget? PCO. Project change orders will inundate your site because planning and design failed you. So now a $20 million project becomes $25 million. You remember the conversation we had last year, Craig, about the GMP, the guaranteed maximum price, really isn't a guaranteed maximum price. The reason why design and planning has failed you. It's just a basic design. The contractor can't construct it as design, so they push weekly project change orders to Geraldo. And every PCO we can't remember the Bell project. What do we add, Geraldo? About $2 million to that project. $2 million. Design and planning is going to cost you more money. And there's money that Geraldo felt he had to build classrooms he doesn't have because design and planning ate up your cash flow because every week there's something new, every week there's something new, every week there's something new. And I was inundated. And I loved it when President DeLuz finally asked, what's the point of having a GMP if you can't depend on it? It's just a made up term, it's arbitrary. And some of these contractors take that contract knowing that they're going to get their money on the back end. We just get it through PCOs. They don't really care that that design team is sea level. It's just going to make us more money. And so on that $2 million that we had to pay extra to get Bell built, everybody involved gets a pay raise because everyone's working on a percentage. It's my percent is 5% of the total cost of the contract. Right? I get paid from that $2 million, correct? So do I really care? Right? So in lease back, you run into those sort of conflicts of interest. Do they really care if the project is going to cost more? Everybody makes more money. So these are things I want this board to consider going forward because those are smart things to consider, you know.
But I mean, that's the same even in the bidding process. I mean, let's say you put together a project and you forget to include certain things in the bid. A contractor will bid it based on what you gave them, knowing that there's stuff that they're gonna have to do and going to have to add back in. So I mean, it's not something that's unique to the lease back.
It's not unique to it, right? Because the design part of it is your architect firm. The most important decision you make is your architect firm, right? Because whether you're doing a lease back or a design bid build, right? If that design is not what it should be, everybody makes extra money going forward, right?
Mr. Raven has.
Yes.
So when you're going through this planning and design phase, are you taking into account the economic history of the past and the projections for where the economy is headed? you're gonna make me remember what I said. But anyways, the question was,
The question was, is the economics in the future that are coming are included in the design? That was your question.
The quick, short answer is yes. And this is something that Geraldo and I talk about all the time. That's why you want to keep a project on schedule. If you delay it a month, 6 months, or a year, the price of construction goes up every day, right? It's impacted by inflation, or just impacted by price gougers, correct? And so if the board approves the project in 2024 and it does not start until 2026, the GMP is going to be garbage, right? Because there are 2 years of economic impact, economic trends, everyone taking advantage of the district. And so now that price point will probably go up 20 to 30% from what, as a board, you've agreed to budget on that project. So now the 46 million you get from the general voters for a bond does not go as far as you thought it would go.
One of the things to note is it could also work in the contrary. In the late 2000s to 2010s, when there was the economic downturn, we found that construction companies were looking for work.
Absolutely.
And so the dollars that we had actually went farther.
Absolutely.
Than they would have. So it is important to consider, what your economic forecast is looking like over those few years, because it can either help you or it can either help you or hurt you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Sometimes waiting makes sense.
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. Right. Just waiting for the world to crash. But you're correct. We have seen that a few times in the market for a short period of time. It was cheaper for a shorter period of time. But unfortunately, when we come out of those time periods, everyone wants to make their money back. And so they escalate the price. That's why the price of construction, because COVID shut a lot down. So coming out of COVID, everybody escalated the prices. That's why the price of construction has doubled since COVID. And so since no one inquired enough, they just kept raising the price. Great questions. Any others?
One of the other things, though, by the way, that's actually increasing the price is labor. They're estimating now that for every it used to be for every one person that retired in the construction trades, they were replaced by 5. Now it's closer to 2.5. So we're not seeing a growth in the construction trades, people going into those jobs the way we used to.
At the California Department of Industrial Relations, their primary responsibility to the state is to make sure that every job classification is always replenished. Their greatest fear is in construction. No one's going into construction. They refer to it as a pandemic. As President DeLuz alluded to, in 5 to 10 years, it's going to be a one-to-one replacement. And so now when you do construction projects, the labor itself puts you out of the business, maybe even doing the project. Because what the state does, for an example, the state has given the district a defined amount of money to build the portables or the modulars that you're going to build at Maine. That price was set about 3 years ago. And you're going to still get that amount. It was roughly $1 million per classroom. You can't do it for $1 million now. So now when you get that money, you have to look at what do we have to put in to get those classrooms built. So the grant dollars that you have for Maine now is not going to build those classrooms at Maine, because the money that the state said they would give for those early childhood facilities, they don't track the rise of inflation. They don't track the rise of labor costs. They don't track the rise of just simple price gouging. They don't track the rise of you delayed the project for whatever reason. So those are things to consider as well. But you do build facilities, and you use state funding, and you go through DSA, the Office of Public School Construction, you qualify for reimbursements. If you build a brand new school, meaning a school that never existed at a new address, it's a new construction. The reimbursement is at 50%. If it's a modernization of an existing school, the reimbursement is at 60%. Is at 60%. So one of the things that I spoke with your superintendent and your CBO, and I'm being transparent with the board, you've had a $46 million bond, general facilities bond. You should be looking for 60% of that back because you spend it all on facilities. Have you received it? All right. You want to start asking those questions because some of the numbers that have been projected seems very low compared to the state equation. And that's been the equation for years. 50% reimbursement for new construction, 60% for modernizations.
But that's dependent on state funds being available. And well, when was the last time they passed a statewide bond to actually fund that? Right? Because I know we got a lot of eligible projects that we've already done. The key is getting the reimbursement, and it's just one of those kind of, I will gladly pay you Tuesday for a classroom.
Absolutely.
Today.
We're going to talk about that in a minute. But what's critical, getting in line, right? Because we will pass a bond at some point. It may not be this November, but will it be the following November? And if you're not in line, if your application is not in line because there's a document that you do have that's been presented, it says that the amount of applications ahead of you already is in excess of 300 million. And the good part about it, those state bonds are normally in the 15 to 20 billion price range. But if you're not in line for it now, when it's approved, everybody's going to get the application in. So get your applications in now because you should have quite a bit of money coming. Go ahead, Geraldo.
In the funding available, those three items in the bottom, federal and state care funds, that's what I call it the COVID funds. We no longer have the money, we spend in September 30. And yes, ADA and general fund could be used for facilities, but the funding that we receive, like from the state, is not for that. It's usually to cover the general fund operations or the district, like salary benefits and running the school. So yes, it's unrestricted. Yes, we could use it for facilities, but we usually don't get we used to get even deferment. We don't even get that. So it's part of the general fund that just to maintain our buildings and so they last longer. But it's not I just want the public to know that's not the purpose of the money. That's really not. So.
Good comment, Geraldo. Only a few more slides. Areas of emphasis. All right. So if you take the comment that Geraldo just made, and there is a recommendation before the board already that you received in a previous presentation, that you lend yourself $7 million from the general fund. All right. You have to think of, is that a good idea? Is this the market to do it in? There is a revision coming to the state budget, things of that nature. I'm going to let Geraldo speak on that now before I get deeper into this slide, because he has more in-depth information on what's available. If you lend yourself that money, will it actually be a loan or will it be a permanent transfer? Because we all know that Governor Newsom did a good job of making the surplus available. That's what he funded early childhood education with. He stopped early childhood education grants. You can't build any more early childhood classrooms using a state grant anymore. So that money is gone. And so we don't know what this budget revise is going to look like, but it is going to impact the district's ability to borrow money from general fund to do facilities projects.
Before Mr. Castillo, I can speak for him. I just want to clarify, in June 29, 2023, the board did approve to loan, 7 million from the general fund, for the central kitchen. I will say that project should have been at the same time as Main Avenue, right? I did put a pause because of the budget, right? Why we're saying this is kind of like part one in the series, because I want to revisit this when Mr. Castillo does our unaudited actuals. It's important for us right now. Our cash flow is important, and so different situation a year from a year ago. So I want to just provide clarity that the board did approve to use general funds and then get reimbursement back. But while we should be in the process of planning and design, I did put a pause just until he does our unaudited actuals, and you will have an idea of where we were. I did not want to put our districts in a situation where we would have a cash flow problem because we loaned from the general fund.
And I feel the board was encouraged to make that decision, to make that loan predicated on bond money being available for the reimbursements, which you pointed out neatly. That money is not available now. It may have been when the decision was made, but that money is not there now. And so the likelihood that you're going to get that reimbursement anytime soon is not likely. So it may have an impact on the decisions that you made. While it was a good decision at the time because there may have been money available for reimbursements, but the current application pool says that there is 317 million in front of any application that goes in today.
But I think even more important is the situation with the state budget. The situation with the state budget has changed, meaning that's cash flow money that might be needed in order to run schools as opposed to building the central kitchen. So it's definitely worth taking a second look at.
Well, I think they answered the question, right? But to them. So yes, and so the board has not approved expenditure from like from the general fund. They approved a loan, right? That's what approved it, and we said that we will get reimbursed when this money comes back to us, the general fund. So and that's how the budget is. So you don't have like an expenditure of the general fund for $7 million. So it is in the reserve account. So now, as of today, the amount that what we expect to get reimbursed in the future is $4.5 million. So that's a difference of about, between the seven and and that's, assuming that we stay within the $7 million of the cost of the central kitchen. So that's the risk. And about I asked Superintendent Chen to give me a little bit more time when we close the books, so I could give definitely answer about where our cash flow is, and also the state is changing. The state still says that there's a potential deferrals. So I just asked I will give it by September 15. I will kind of give you a little bit more information because even though the state passed the budget, they're doing a lot of what call it cleanup budget bills to do that, and so there's still a lot of details coming on as it is right now. So,
and cash flow is important because a lot of districts, that didn't have the cash resource. We had cash resources because we had passed a bond when we went through the economic downturn. So when we needed, if we needed that to just get us through from a month to month or over a period of time, we had that available. We had that resource available. We take a lot of money on interest charges. Well, guess what? Interest rates have gone way up, meaning that borrowing that money, even in the short, especially in the short term, now means it's going to be more expensive to borrow the money than if we actually have the resources, have the money in the bank.
And for any of you who would like to track the availability of any funds in the state for school facilities program, it's called SFP, School Facilities Program. If they pass a statewide facilities general obligation bond, it shows up in this particular account. And you can Google it and it'll show you currently there's nothing available. Right. That's the end of the orchestrated presentation. So this is a great time for that robust conversation that we've been having continued.
So I have a couple questions.
I'm surprised.
So you said that we are expecting approximately 227 students from the panel. So what I would like to know is if we have gotten a timeline for when they're going to break ground. Do we need to make this decision like in the next year? Or is it going to be pushed off for another 3-4 years for them to break ground? Because they've been talking about that since I moved to the area 14 years ago. And so making a decision like that when they haven't even broken ground, I can't imagine us wasting money to build a new school if nothing's going up.
And that has always been my caution to the district. There are no applications for actual building, but Geraldo has been given other information that some of that construction is prominent. And you do not need to make that decision today. But I think as we have that conversation about the 5-year master plan, it probably should be in your 5-year master plan.
Okay.
If you go through Del Paso right before the Not Thomas Charter Schools, you will see signs that says available, put your name in the list, available housing for 2000, spring of 2025. So a lot of the Panhandle projects, so that you can see they have been working for the underground utilities, but they have installed advertisement, the houses, and we received approval. We received like a list from the city that housing has been ready to go. So, but I understand what I'm saying. Sometimes the construction companies change the builders, they sell it, and but so that's what it's so that the students that we have is just 4 hour. They're projecting a lot more students than that, but that's just for our K through 6 the projections from the Davis office. But the company that number is a lot higher than that. So that's that's what so it's not my number, it's the number from the graphic
Okay, so have you seen any zoning? Are there going to be any like apartments or anything in that area that can reduce the number to help us get to that 500?
that number includes everything that they
Okay. Okay.
The Davis demographics is one of the best in the state.
Okay, so, I have a related question to that. Is there- So I have a related question to that. It involves a timeline. Is there an equilibrium within that timeline where we should be targeting our building, or when should we try to have that capacity available? Because if they start housing contracts today, next year not going to have 200% funding. So, what should we be targeting for a date for that capacity?
Yeah, that's a great question. And they have like a period. That's like a period of 5. They say like in a period of 5 years. When the students come, and we will have between 2 and 5 years. They not give like a definite answer. They say between a period of 2 to 5 years. Sometimes family moves, they don't necessarily come with kids, so they include this between a period of 2 to 5 years. And it goes increasing too. Like they also not a the students don't come like in a class of 24 or 20 or the same. That's something that we have to.
Something to keep in mind, this is why that 2 to 5 years is critical. Davis demographics understands that these projections were for a school district. The sweet spot is 3 years. The state of California does not allow a school district to build schools for future needs. It will only let you project out 3 years maximum. In some cases, it allows you to project out 5 years. But that first phase of the project is getting justification and approval from the state. The state will not allow you to build schools for, say, we think we're going to have 2,000 kids in 2031. And so Davis will only forecast out in that time span that the CDE is going to accept. So that number of 227 is good for what they expect the growth may be in the next 2 to 5 years, as Robla said. And based on Davis demographics, those are the only numbers that the state is going to accept in terms of your projections, because they will not allow you to build for future needs that you cannot demonstrate that you have. You're next.
I was just like thinking out loud, thinking about some of the neighboring districts as well, and if our numbers would be impacted by like Twin Rivers or Natomas, or if they are assuming that all of the projected kids will definitely be students at our schools.
Well, the 227 is what is projected for Robla. The other ones would be in the other districts. The 227 would be projected for Robla. Yes.
But you know what? You told part of the question is important. So yes, we affected, and we wanna keep our students, right? We wanna make every effort to keep our students. If they don't have, so like I know, like in Terra Thomas, they already create a school who is really close for the area. So we need to make sure that we are proactive and make sure when the students come to say this is your home school or this is what we have and what we offer. And, unfortunately, the projection is not big enough to create a school. But what are we doing to keep those students? So yeah, it's just and it's just I can tell you the other school districts they will try to get our students if we're not proactive. That's one of my biggest worries that I have been shared to the superintendent. We wanna yeah.
I'm going to give you another aspect to your question. Sac City Unified School District has enough classrooms for 69,000 students. This year, they enrolled roughly 38,000. So you ask yourself, where did 30,000 students go to? They went to Elk Grove because Elk Grove was busy building brand new schools on the southern borders of Sacramento. So to Geraldo's point, if you don't prepare yourself for them, because I'm almost certain that Twin Rivers will put a brand new school in close proximity to that housing. If you're not prepared, they'll just simply go to a school that's brand new.
And one of the things that comes to my mind is we were having this discussion back before the crash in 2008. And there was plans at that time for Twin Rivers to be building a school up there. And, the school got built, but the housing didn't in that area. And we also have been hearing about Hanson Lakes for the last 20 years, which is basically right across the street from us, but yet we have not seen any results. So I'm wondering if it may be better from our standpoint is once they've put a shovel in the ground, then start planning for the additional students. Because like I say, this was something that was planned 15 years ago and disappeared because of the economic times went down the hill.
I thought it went down after Hurricane Katrina because they had to get the levees and everything fixed.
That too.
Yeah, okay.
I'm of the same mindset. But what I will say, what part of this presentation was about was the current needs of classrooms. So if you go ahead and build those new 9 classrooms, it also satisfies the current need that the superintendent has already identified. And so it becomes a win-win because you currently need the classrooms anyway. Right.
So I think you said about 149 students that could have been housed at Taylor should have been housed at Taylor because that would be their home school? 129. Do we know that those 129 were able to stay within Robla district, or did we lose some of those kids outside of Robla?
Those 129 are currently attending other Robla schools. But I do know, because I had one family who I know has 3 students that can't go to Taylor and they're attending higher learning, right? So I was like, oh, that's 3 students. So how many other families have not shared that with me because they can't be at their home school? They're going to another option. But those 129s are within our other Robla schools.
I also want to state that I oversee the students enrolling in the GATE program. And with all the modernization and changes of the face of many of our other schools, we had families who denied enrolling their children in the GATE program because they didn't like the look of Taylor Street. They felt their school was nicer looking, you know, even though we had this great quality program that's at Taylor. So that, you know, that first image.
Member Devine, you had a second question. Did you get it out?
Thank you.
Anyone else? Great conversation. You know, I really don't need the exercise.
I have a couple of questions about the central kitchen, just that concept and that idea. So we've had a chef for the last 2 years, right, who's been training our kitchen staff at each school site for scratch cooking. So my question is, we trained all this staff at the school sites. If we had a central kitchen, does all that staff get a job at that central kitchen? Or how does it impact that staffing? And then secondly, if we have a central kitchen and everything's cooked in a central kitchen, you have to get that food from the central kitchen to those other school sites. So I don't remember hearing about trucks, vans, you know, what we need and the staffing to move that food from one central kitchen, because obviously you have to keep it hot and cold, right? So those are my questions.
You want to answer that directly? Yeah, and so we could cooperate too. So Erica will more in detail, but the staffing was no, like I want to pick a school, for instance, Glenwood, right? You have like three staff there. There will be like 2 will move to the central kitchen and 1 is still be there. So there was not a lot of plan to add an additional. It might be a few, maybe 1, but not a lot. It's not going to be like a additional operating cost, like adding a whole new team. That was just part of that. And I let Erica talk more about the other portion, but that was how it was planned. Mm-hmm.
So I feel strongly that I just need to define kind of what the central kitchen means for us in Robla. You know, I've even changed the name to calling it a hub kitchen to try and rid ourselves of this narrative that all of the meals will be cooked in the central kitchen and then transported out to sites. We absolutely want all sites to be cooking food. The trends are all heading that way anyway. Many years ago, the central kitchens, you know, they turned into airline food, you know, and those haven't been nearly as successful. What we're talking about is not a giant mega building. You know, we really are talking about just a secondary space that will primarily help to serve our warehouse. Our warehouse right now is failing. You know, the refrigeration and our cold storage is not adequate. So that's one thing that it'll achieve. But also, the way I'm kind of describing it is almost like the blue apron model. So that what's going to happen in the central kitchen is just going to support the cooking that is happening at the sites. Because due to the many things that we are not able to do in our kitchens just because of the space, we're not able to make the upgrades because it triggers DSA. You know, we are really stuck with the footprint and the hood systems. I mean, our kitchens just are not adequate. You know, Mr. Hickey, you talked about, does anyone remember the schools I mean, you don't have to go very far to remember. You just need to walk into any kitchen to go back because they're all stuck in the way, way, way back, you know, the 1950s, 1960s. And we're not able to make the upgrades that we need in those kitchens due to that DSA trigger. So anyhow, what we want to do at the central kitchen is to provide, prepped ingredients, sauces, things that are going to support cooking at the sites and allow them to do things that they cannot do right now due to spatial constraints and electrical upgrades and everything else. So I just want to make it super clear that we're not trying to ship, all the meals out. And it would just take the one driver that we already have. We're already looking to replace the box truck anyway. So those are things that we're all thinking about.
And if I could just add, it is important.
Great clarification.
I just want to add, the explanation that Erica or Ms. Lee provided, right? Just to be transparent, at the June 29, 2023 meeting, right? That wasn't the narrative. So what Cindy had explained, what was presented was all the kitchen was being done. So as we explore the option of central kitchen or hub kitchen or whatever, just know that the June 29, 2023 meeting presented the central kitchen as this is where we are going to cook and distribute, right? When I came on board and I had a conversation,
I recall it being more of that, where
Yeah.
when I say prepared, like you said, a lot of the things that can't be prepared or make it easier, it's almost like we're gonna put all the pieces together, we're gonna create all the pieces, take the pieces to the school sites, and the school sites are then gonna be able to cook the meal, almost like a blue apron, almost like what's the word I'm looking, what's the company that you order the meals and it comes?
Fresh.
Yes, yeah.
That was the same
Exactly.
thing.
Yeah,
To
okay.
support
Yeah.
the scratch cooking idea.
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah, I took it as all the prep work was gonna be there because the
Yeah.
kitchens were so small that they couldn't really prep
Yeah.
much.
And we can absolutely revisit, just me
Mhm.
doing a little bit of history, and I will own it and say I didn't listen to the board meeting before, and I was like, oh my gosh, when we were redesigning the central kitchen, the specs that was presented to you is a lot different in my conversation with Erica, right? Because watching the June 29 presentation, it really, my interpretation was it was cooking and then distribute. And in my conversation with Erica, she's like, no, that was not our thought. I said, okay, so let's look at the specs. The specs are a little different than what you'll see. So this is where, as I say, when we revisit the conversation, we can really look at the ideal, if we're moving forward with this, what would be its intent and how do we support it?
And that was one of the purposes of this workshop, is to put all that on the table. But I will say that whatever that price was for the central kitchen, that estimate in 2023, that's not the price now.
Can you refresh me and my mind and let me know where exactly we are in that project right now? In case, what stage?
The central kitchen?
Correct.
Nothing.
Zero. That's
Zero.
right now, zero.
There's no architect, there's no.
We approve, official.
No, let me clarify. We did I can talk here. Yeah, I can talk here. Okay. So we did interviews for the central kitchen. We have identified an architect, but I put a pause in the work. So we haven't had conversations regarding design. We have not moved forward with the geotech and all that other stuff.
No one's under contract, correct?
Nothing is done.
No one's under contract.
So the budget that we approved.
No, we approved the architects.
We do have a contract, but we have somebody calling
We-
to
yeah.
all the work. So we invest more in the contract, the architects and the so that's your so we did approve in that really was in the May board meeting.
That means that the budget that we approved for it is.
But we never give a notice on this.
No,
So
to
that's
proceed.
another part. So you put a contract and then do any work unless we give a notice to the chief. You can start work and then they can. That is not.
Okay, so that means that whatever we approve in 2 years or 3 years, we have to start all over again, and if we put it on a hold for a long period, means the budget that we have, we maybe not be able to reach it. Yes, correct.
So I'm sensing that there are options that you'd like us to consider. I'd like to
Know the options.
hear those options.
And do those options, what, you said the specs had changed. So do the options, fit the change or we consider that as well?
So just for clarity, options for the central kitchen or options for facilities projects, just for clarity?
Facilities project.
Both.
Okay.
Either in addition to or an alternative to.
And I would like options on these classrooms besides Taylor Street with 129 students that had to be moved to different schools. Do we have any options or an idea of how we can address that for next school year so they can go back to their own school?
If we add classrooms to Taylor Street, then students can go back to their home school. So Taylor right now is limited. They have one classroom that I could convert into a classroom with students. Right now it is currently used for restorative justice, mental health services, things like that. But in order to have any students go, I would need to add classrooms, whether it's portable, modular, or whatever
Is
you
there
call
room
it.
for that? Okay.
Tech has space,
It
has
really-
property.
Oh, that's
Taylor has
right.
property.
They just
Oh,
have
if we add classrooms, you're clearly not taking up buildings within, in that short amount of time, so you're talking about, portables.
Portable.
Portable.
Yes.
So let's talk about that. Keep talking.
Yeah, if I had my wish list, I would add classrooms to Taylor for next school year, and I would add classrooms, at least a classroom or two to Glenwood.
Do
So-
we have cost estimates on how much that would cost for each site?
Not at this time.
Preliminary.
Yeah.
She's asked me to get a cost estimate. And so identify space and location at both sites, Glenwood and Taylor.
And I also want to, I'm sorry.
And you do not have to get portables brand new. There are a lot of districts who are doing quite a bit of building, and they would give you their portables, but they may get you 5 or 10 years of use. So you can do it, at a financial price where you're not taking away everything from the other projects you want to do. So the question becomes, if you're going to do portables, are you looking for a portable that's going to last you 30 years or one that's going to last you 5 years? And so did you have the option, did you buy brand new, or did you go next door and get portables that some school districts, they do not want to pay the cost of moving or demolishing, so they would give them to you for $1, so you pay the cost of transporting them and installing your own utilities.
But I want to be clear and transparent, right? So my wish list, Taylor is not on the list for any type of project even if the bond passes in November, right? When you look at the eligible classrooms that was presented to me, Taylor is not the one that's next. So I want to be clear with that. So if we talk
But
about.
if we're displacing families and not allowing them to go to school in their community and everything, I feel like that is something that's important.
Absolutely, but I just want to be transparent. So when we have this conversation, we would be reallocating funds that might have been assigned to something else. So
How did we decide? I mean, what's the priorities that was used in order to decide, okay, well, this is the order in which we're going to go? Because, I mean, if 129 students that should be at Taylor are not able to go to Taylor, if clearly their central kitchen is too small, or their space is too small, if the exterior isn't kept, it's sounding like, I mean, at what point is Taylor on the list?
that's why I wanted to have this
Yeah.
facilities workshop.
Exactly.
And so when Gerardo gives us audit actuals in September, then you all will know, is there a certain amount of money? And then you will advise me, let's prioritize. We would put all these, kind of like these things and say, okay, I mean, this is, with this money, this is what projects we want to prioritize.
Because personally, I think that something for Taylor Street should outrank the central kitchen as well as discussing even a new school for the PFL. This is something immediate that people are dealing with right now.
I think to a certain degree, what's been happening, and this is, we've been going after projects for which there is money to get reimbursed, and I think part of the challenge has been Taylor hasn't qualified for those funds. we're at a point where we're like, okay, well, if there's not money currently out there to be chased, but we have stuff that needs to be done, you know, maybe it makes more sense to start to take a look at what are the needs, and then start to prioritize more based on what needs are, instead of just where are the dollars that we can chase for reimbursement.
Well, there's that, and there's also the historical reference. Taylor was one of our from our first bond, and we put effort into it. And then in our second bond, and we really focused on the other sites. We did that, knowing that we had already focused on Taylor, but Taylor was never done. It was just kind of put on the back burner, and it's not that we.
And that's the first observation that Eileen made when she got here, is that Taylor was not in the same condition, as being right size as the other 4 sites. That's the first observation that she did make. But to that question, this workshop is that work or prioritizing it. And that's why she wanted to have this workshop, so that a smart conversation could occur around what she sees as a current need and the direction that the board is going to give her and the rest of the team to move forward on. Right, but I want to speak to the central kitchen of the hub. I don't think anything needs to be off the table, because another thing that we have discussed is how do you right size those kitchens where they are not functional for a 21st century kitchen to serve the students at that particular site, which spurred the question of a central kitchen to eliminate the DSA restrictions, correct? And so there's some workaround around those DSA restrictions that we can consider if there's funding to have, because if you go back to one slide, one of the recommendations that Eileen put on the table is that we do right size out of these kitchens. If you do not move forward with the central kitchen, those other kitchens still need to be right sized.
Yes.
Yes.
So her intent is not to leave those kitchens in place dysfunctional, but what do we do as a district to make the facility suitable for what child nutrition needs? Is it a central operation, or do we spend money to right size those kitchens so that she and her staff can do the work that they need to do for the district? And so speaking of options, there is an option to right size the existing facilities. It's just a matter of.
I didn't realize that was an option, because I thought that CFW had done a cost analysis and determined that it was going to be way, 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 way higher than the cost of the central kitchen. Is that?
That probably is true, but I think at the next session, when we see after Gerardo tells us what options we have, we put it all down. So here's one project, and here's the estimated cost. Here's another project, here's the estimated cost. And then, the board prioritizes, knowing how much each project is and what money that we have available to us.
Yeah. Well, I'm just gonna go for it, guys, because I have the microphone. Needs so much help. I mean, I cannot tell you, these are not commercial kitchens. These are not commercial facilities. There is wood countertops. I mean, we talked about school safety. I mean, school safety is at risk. A health department comes in, does inspections. We pass those inspections, but only because everything has been grandfathered in. And we are decades and decades and decades behind. And I really just encourage this board to take a walk and to go see these kitchens and just know that we have peaked. We have worked hard these last 2 years, but we are not able to go any further with the setup we have now.
So at least those of us who have looked, we're not delusioned. We know those kitchens need to be replaced. If this is not a renovation or modernization, we realize they do need to be replaced. They are safe in many ways. I would be concerned if there was an OSHA inspection in some of those kitchens.
Okay, yeah. So, kind of reaffirming what he said, the plans that we're thinking about, and we'll hopefully get from you are the proposals. One is a central kitchen and keeping the current kitchens that of a similar size because the central kitchen supports them, and the other is right sizing them, which means rebuilding them and making sure we don't have wood, this and stuff like that. But what you're also saying is even if we do go with the central kitchen, we still need to do a lot of stuff inside these other kitchens.
I mean, yes and no. We can't have it all. We know that. So I think that, if I had to pick, absolutely, if there was tons and tons of money, I would want to see every kitchen multi-purpose room because that's also been a headache all week trying to figure out, even just in the after-school setting, how we can fit all the kids in the cafeteria. Currently, we have 3 after-school programs at Taylor. They eat supper, and they all can't fit in the cafeteria as enrollment continues to increase.
Okay, so
MP rooms are also a big, part of this as well. So, if there was an option, absolutely.
okay, so but to me that's a separate issue because I heard wood counters and things like that, and that's safety. That's different from having a suitable area for dining. So
And we're already starting to make those changes because when I came in, that was a huge priority. So this summer we put in stainless countertops at 2 of our schools. So we're going to continue to do that no matter what. That's just a very, very minor cost in the grand scheme of things.
I think part of the thing was, and one of the things that made we'll call it the central kitchen or the facility, was that it gave us an opportunity to create a larger size multi-purpose space at Bell Avenue. And part of it was that because we didn't have the resources to do it at every school. This allowed us to get a proper sized one at least at another school. But it's sounding like there are other priorities that might be greater, and that's a problem that needs to be solved because we need one at Bell. Bell's is not large enough. We need one at Taylor. Taylor's is not large enough. So we've got to address those at both of those school sites. But I think this was a way in which to handle, at least address that particular issue at one of our sites.
Something else to consider: do you build NPRs or do you build cafeterias? NPRs are expensive because you go higher per square foot. In this district, based on my observations, you really don't use the NPR for what it's used for. All right. So if you're not going to facilitate NPR program, then just build cafeterias.
Well, and that's why this was a cafeteria. It was just a larger sized cafeteria.
No, I just said because you had mentioned the word NPR. So it's something because some believe in building NPRs.
Well, that's why I said multi-purpose facility instead of multi-purpose. Because obviously you're right. It's like made for like basketball and sport stuff like that. Or
Great conversation. Somebody's kind of passionate about that central kitchen, huh? So the foundation needs to do better work. They're gonna need some extra money around here. We appreciate the $5,000 check, but you need to do better, okay?
Going back to Taylor, one of you mentioned rolling in some classrooms if we can get them. Some options are towing them in $4. So, but we also, I heard the comment here tonight that we weren't getting people in our gate program because of the way the site looked. And I remember Taylor and some of how it looked. What I don't want is to go back to kind of a patchwork looking site, but I also know that we may plan for a temporary structure to be 5 years, and 10 years later we're trying to figure out yes, it's still there. So I think we have to consider something like that when we're rolling in these. What if we decide to go that way? Roll in classrooms, whatever. That's be part of it. What is this going to look like? How is it going to not just function for classrooms, but what does it do to the overall site as well? I really don't want to just roll in some portables and say, okay, we fixed the problem. We've got some schools, some classrooms.
I'm not sure if everyone is focused on the title, Facilities Master Planning with an equity focus. So what's the equity that we're going to focus on as it relates to Taylor? Should have an equity focus, correct? because that school needs to be right size. Because one of the things the right sizing does, it keeps students in place, it keeps families in place. It allows the kids engaged to want to go to Taylor. That's why Taylor, whatever we do there, has to have an equity focus to it.
See, in this particular case, it's not just one thing. It's not just right sizing, but it's right quality.
Absolutely.
I mean, the issue with the gate students wasn't that there wasn't space for them. It was that the quality of other facilities seemed to be superior. So therefore, they wanted their kids to go to where they felt the facilities were better. That's also something that needs to be addressed, and that's also my concern is that bringing in portables, especially when the state provided a portable replacement fund because they wanted to get away from the state wanted to get away from utilizing portables.
Mhm.
If it's a short term investment that allows us to get to a more permanent, higher quality solution, then I'm not opposed to the portables. But I am if that's going to be our long term solution. Or I'm concerned. I'm not going to be opposed till I see the numbers, but I'm concerned.
But as Mr. Barnes alluded to, it's incumbent on us to say if they're there for 5 years, they shouldn't be there in 10 years. Portables in schools throughout this country was meant to be temporary. Some of these portables are 40 years old, simply because we have kept them. They were always designed to be temporary. But part of this conversation is around what does the new 5-year master plan look like? So in 5 years, when we're having this conversation, do we forget about those portables at Taylor? Or do we go ahead and do something with them? So a lot of times what happens, I believe, administration changes, the board changes, need changes, and next thing you know, that portable's been there for 30 years because it's functional. So that's why my recommendation to the district is really make your decisions around an equity focus. What's equitable for Taylor? Because in my opinion, Taylor has not gotten what the other 4 schools have. And there's some things we need to do at Glenwood to let Glenwood be equitable to some of the other ones. It's apparent what Bell, Robla, and Maine received. It's really apparent what Taylor did not receive. So it is with an equity focus. And the question was, what do we do to house those 129 students next school year? The only option is a portable, if you want to keep them there. But to attract Gate back to Taylor, more needs to be done.
And when you talk about equity, I think about the population of students at Taylor. And I think that we have seen this like across the board in terms when we look at test scores, when we look at attendance, when we look at some of these other things, like, sometimes we think that the place where the students learn doesn't matter, but it does matter. It definitely does matter. And I think that we have seen that I think that I've observed that across the board, the population of the students that do go to Taylor. And so, I'm not opposed to a student who's like, I don't want to go to Taylor because I want to go to Main Avenue because the school looks better. It feels better when I walk into there. And so I kind of am opposed to the idea of forcing a kid to go sit in a portable when they can go to a better school. To me, that doesn't feel fair.
Oh, that's true, correct?
Right. That's true. Yep.
That's why Sac City is 30,000 students short from the maximum capacity. That's true.
Well, there's other reasons too.
Since we're being recorded, I don't want to say everything. Yeah.
Well, I've talked to their board members. They know. They know I feel.
Don't make them mad.
But families didn't have the option to go to much newer facilities.
And once again, in all of this, I'll be honest. This is sometimes a hard thing to say. But the other thing is that if it doesn't make dollar sense, then it doesn't make sense. Meaning, it has to be done. It has to make sense fiscally. I'm not saying that it has to be the best financial option, but it's got to be something that makes fiscal sense. So in other words, if we're putting money, I don't want to put good money after bad. Is my point.
Right. So like I said, I want to make sure that as we're investing, we're addressing the issue of both right sizing, but also increasing and improving and giving them an equitable quality of facility there at Taylor.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So one of the things you've been discussing is perceptions as far as the GATE program and other students at Taylor. And one thing that comes to mind when it comes to perception that's been displayed throughout the state is the concept that the parents develop in their mind is, okay, because the facilities don't look all that great, the staff's not going to be as productive, as happy with their environment, and it's going to reflect upon their teaching. Granted, in our district, that's not the case, but the parents don't know that because they base their own perceptions.
And mainly what we're talking about in terms of aesthetics is mostly the exterior, because every single one of our classrooms has been upgraded into a 21st century classroom.
That's correct.
So inside the class, it's equitable. Outside of the class, not outside of the classroom, specifically, not so much.
One of Eileen's first comments about facilities at Taylor, there was a question of, I forget the amount of funding that we were discussing. She said, you know what? We could paint the outside of Taylor for that amount of money. All right? You remember that conversation? So there has always been a concern of hers was the aesthetics and what it meant to that community and the students going there. I forget what the money was that we were considering, but she thought that money could be best spent on painting the exterior of Taylor and doing some other work on the outside of Taylor. Yeah.
And Taylor has shifted. I mean, there's no principle. Taylor has won all the attendance challenges all last year. That the pride at that school, under the leadership of Ms. Chris, and Ms. Cabras, has really shifted. We know, Ramon can probably attest, students want to go back to Taylor. Yes, but when you have one teacher per class, one teacher per grade level because of the capacity, once you're there and you're moved, like if you're first grade and that class is full and you're going to be there second grade, there's no new students or returning students that can come back because there's no other class options.
And I think they have one of the most heavily attended after school programs. So the families there are very supportive of academic enrichment. And so they have more students enrolled in after school programs at that site than the other 4 sites.
Glenwood's number 1.
Is it?
And then
So we're gonna be getting a presentation next month, correct, about the
next steps.
budget and everything.
Yes.
When we get that, will you give us some options because won't it take almost the whole school year to get things kind of set up and for next school year?
I can't answer that, but I can say that once Gerardo gives us the unaudited actuals, we will have an idea of what money we might be able to work with, and then we will have a follow-up. Like, okay, here's what we have. Here are the projects. Maybe my projects are on here, but there might be other things that we can think about, or taking some of the projects that I listed and then go a little bit more deeper, and then we'll have a discussion.
Okay. Just trying to get a timeline in my head for myself.
And if I could recommend that these discussions continue in a workshops type of format, because we're almost two hours into this discussion. It may not play well at one of your regularly scheduled board meetings. And so if we keep this in a workshop format where this is the focus of the conversation, I think that it lends itself better to what we're trying to accomplish.
And one of the things I'd like to see is just develop a process whereby, because here's the thing, if there's something that is a need, it's a need. Just because it's not at the top of the priority list doesn't mean that it's not a need. Doesn't mean that because things may change, it may become a greater priority. And once again, if this is going to be a 5-year rolling master plan, something may wind up at, we may have it set at year 5, but eventually we're going to get to year 5, and that's going to make it to the front of the line. There may be some time along the way where it makes sense to to put it together with something else and do it earlier. The priorities may change. Funding may arise.
Absolutely.
But everything needs to be on the table, and that includes things like deferred maintenance, like painting and stuff like that. All of that needs to be, and one of the things I think we should consider is, having this discussion at the various school sites. Because there's stuff that I have no idea about that's going on over at Taylor or that's going on over at Glenwood. Glenwood is, it's our, I want to say our newest school, but it was built in '91. I mean, it's time for it. I'm sure there's stuff that needs to be done there.
Yeah.
And so I think having that and developing that matrix, whatever you want to call it, of how it's going to look and how we're going to list the projects and prioritize them. I think something like that would be helpful for us as we take a look at proposed projects.
Yes, and I was just about to say that we need to go to the site. That we do need to go to the sites. Well, I disagree that Glenwood is our newest site because I think we need to reframe that. I think Maine is our newest site. And I say that because Maine was technically built, is newer. So I'll look at it a little bit different. That's beside the point. But we do need to take it to the sites because I'll be honest, if I went and saw a kitchen and saw some counters, I would not know that, you said, oh, these counters need to be replaced. I'm looking at them thinking, oh, these counters look nice. I'm not going to know. So I need to know stuff like that. I'm not an expert on counters.
You don't have to be an expert to walk into Taylor's. You can't even open the drawer. Anything that's underneath there, they have to get it out and wash it because all of those things.
Okay, well, that in itself is a problem. But you're talking about stuff that's grandfathered in. I'm not going to know that. So I need to know stuff like that because I'm going to rely on you to be that kind of expert. And also going back to the C, or the advisors and everything. I'm not an architect, so I'm going to rely on you. I'll ask some tough questions later on, but I am not an architect, so I'm going to rely on you to help create these 8 quality, planning or something. Because later on, I'll come back with some tough questions and stuff, but I'm going to assume that we're getting A quality work until we go over budget and start getting all these additions and things.
Would it be possible to do
Comment.
board meetings at the other sites, like a different site every month? So that way, before our board meeting starts, we can maybe get a tour of the site, and maybe you can show us what's wrong with the kitchens, what needs to be fixed, so that way we can see as a group.
We used to do that. We used to do that. We used to go to it.
We have to look at is to ensure that we can provide all the
We used to do it.
technological to ensure that those not in attendance are still able to participate. Explore that.
And I think in one of the best
I know we did it at Maine, but
we used to do it. Yeah.
I've been here long enough to know that.
Yeah, and I think it's not just the kitchen. We have a note for the wish list, and
Yeah.
we can see the wish list each school has that we can review and see it.
Maybe even
Yes.
with the principal, like in our closed session, talk with the principal, like maybe one school a month or every 2 months, so we could visit each school site this year and just kind of get an idea.
We couldn't do it
We
during a
couldn't-
closed session.
not closed session, it would be open.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
We could absolutely have a conversation.
So I meant like walking around to see the site. I don't know how that would work in an open session.
I do love walking around and seeing the sites, but I will say I'm kind of full by having our meetings in here. So I'm not full for the meetings.
Sure, no problem.
Gotcha.
Another option is through your tours, 2x2s. You do them anytime. It's outside of the Brown Act, any other regulation. You can just tour the site. It does not have to be open to the public. Just a private tour of board members, 2x2. Right, and it's based on your schedules when you're available. You can do it any time of the day. Then that way, you can walk with superintendent, myself, and whoever, and just have a conversation that's outside of any Brown Act requirement.
And there are some advantages to that, but there are also some. Sorry, there are some advantages to that, but there are also some disadvantages to that. And I will bring up one. We talked about kind of the condition of our sites way back then, and I know Craig was on the board 10, 15, 20 years ago. It's been a while. I remember seeing Taylor as just a parent, kids going to school, walking the sites, and I'm like, this place is too dark. This parking lot is bad. This blah blah. I get lots of complaints. Craig knows because I complained to him because I was just a regular parent. But I'll give that board credit. They didn't have the money, but they came up with some lighting. It may have been a 4x4 and a cable going across, but they got it done. Okay, so they did what they had to do back then. So, and I say that only to say that the 2x2, we lose that kind of historical reference. And sometimes you'll see things and you're like, well, why is that? And you might think it's that someone just Mickey Moused it. That's not always the case. Sometimes, we just had to do things to get things done. And I really, yeah, I remember seeing all of this. I remember seeing the broken air conditioner with the octopus looking vents going all over the place. But we got it done. So sometimes I don't want to lose that historical reference. That's good.
I have here kitchen side, kitchen side, kitchen side, kitchen side. I had again 5 places kitchen side. I everybody know me. I work in the restaurant business for 33 years, and I know what to have the health department in the restaurants, and it's stressful for the staff, for the principal, for the kids, and it's unhealthy. So we really have to make sure our schools meet our regulations, and that is number one priority for safety and sanity and health for the kids. We can't afford that. So when I was asking about the main kitchen, if we don't do nothing with the main kitchen right now and we put it on hold, my vote or my inclination is to really work in the school sites, kitchens, and get whatever we can do to make the sites updated.
Either way, even if we go with the central kitchen, we're still gonna have
We
to at
still
least,
have to do-
yeah, we
yes.
still have to at least replace
Yes.
countertops and
Everything has to be done.
upgrade stuff in the kitchen.
So
Can I just say one thing about that? That is something, I mean, we have spent a lot of money this last summer
Doing those upgrades, but that is something that the Fund 13 Child Nutrition is able to do. Is we are able to do equipment upgrades and countertops and things like that in existing kitchens. We're not able to do facilities or, break down walls or do anything with construction, but that is something that our fund is able to support. And then one other thing I just wanted to say, because we've talked about it constantly kind of behind closed doors, but I just wanted to make the board aware. In terms of the central kitchen, we want nothing more than to have that thing at Taylor. So there's been a lot of conversation around Taylor. And I don't want to pit, classrooms versus central kitchen, but if there was ever an opportunity to, combine projects or do something, we want to be at Taylor because that is our weakest link right now in terms of the kitchens.
Could we attach 9 classrooms to the side of a central kitchen? Just expand out, like push the wall out and put extra walls in?
I am not an expert, but I will be an expert.
Like connected, like
You
bring
bet.
it off the side, and it's all one and done.
So you've been having a conversation involving holding these sessions at the different school sites. And my thought on that is instead of tours, but 2x2 tours, we could always do the same format that we're having tonight where you can have public comment where you're not obligated, you can't address the issues and say, yeah, that's what we're going to do. But get the staff involved at the school sites. Let them communicate to you what they feel the needs are for the school site also.
I'm going to be on the board, and this is all like very it's been a learning experience for me to understand where we are, where our facilities are. And so I guess my question, I just wanted to like go back to the 3-year plan or the 5-year plan or whatever, because my question is, how do we get here where one site feels like it's been neglected? And so how do we get here, and how do we divert and kind of like fix this problem? It feels like that there aren't a lot of options to fix it either. And so what do we as a board, what do we as a community need to do in order to solve that problem? That's something that's been on my head, right, in my mind right now. Like, how do we get here, and then how do we fix it?
I'm gonna give Craig the first shot of the history.
I was ready to say.
I'm sorry. President Deluge the opportunity to address some of the history and I'll fill in some of the stuff that I know.
So when we first passed the bond, well, first of all, let's go back to even before then. We had sat down and we just got through going through a modernization project from the last bond. We realized that there was still a lot of other stuff that we needed to do, and so we just sat down and did exactly what I was talking about. We listed, this is all the things that we need to do, and we hadn't put dollar amounts to it. We realized that, okay, if we do a Prop 47 bond, the 55%, if we did that, we weren't going to get enough money to get done what we wanted to get done. So we went after the 2/3 bond. And by the time that was done, we got it passed. I think we got something like almost 80% support from the community. And so then we went through, and the projects, everything was prioritized based on what people had said was needed. And I'm going to be honest, I don't want to put this, Taylor didn't have the strongest leadership then. And so maybe, and all I'm guessing is that I know that many of our principals did a very good job of advocating for what it was that they did. And all I can guess is, and I'm just once again going back, because I'm looking at it now, and I'm looking at the projects, and I'm like, I don't understand why Taylor, at least exteriorly, didn't get taken care of. Part of that, I think, was the interior classrooms were in such need that's where, when resources came to what we were going to spend money on at Taylor, that's where the priority was, getting each and every one of the classrooms, inside the classrooms, together into the 21st century level. Now, what should have happened following was, as we started getting into the next wave of projects, started looking at the other things in terms of what needed to be external. In terms of the kitchen, I think we all agreed that Taylor was in such bad shape. There's no little amount of dollars that are going to fix what Taylor. They needed a new facility. At least that's what our estimation was at that time. And I think the idea was that once we got to the point where we were done with everything, we'll start now looking at getting that done. One of the things when we started working on the early childhood education stuff, those buildings, I think a lot of our focus got there. And because we hadn't had many conversations about the 5-year master plan and all of that, no conversations about that in place, which is why, quite frankly, this is so timely.
And I want to add, as I did some history regarding the cost of the construction projects, Bell was $3 million over than the GMP. So if it was, and that was a 21.4% increase to the GMP. If it wasn't that much, we might have had.
I'm laughing because I affectionately referred to the Bell project as the money pit. And it was like that because North Sacramento historically, first of all, this didn't become part of the city until the 1960s, late 1960s. And there was no real planning, infrastructure planning or anything. So you're likely to find anything in the ground here in North Sac. And over there at Bell, it was, if it wasn't supposed to be there, it was there. It was like the one thing you could count, and this was even before we started this. Anytime we did anything over at Bell, it was like, okay, what are we gonna find now?
It was like every board meeting.
Yeah.
Something else.
Anyway,
like 6
and
months.
it's but that goes back to the, not so much the design but the planning. If something like that had been taken into account, what are the potential things that we could run into? What historically has happened in this area when it comes to construction projects? There's a
Absolutely.
reason why there's not a lot of new construction over there, and we found out why.
In the aggregate, at that 35,000 feet view, if you will, remember Hamilton. School districts never have enough money for facilities.
Yeah.
When this district passed the bond for 46 million, they needed 200 million. And so since you take the concept of a bond being passed by the entire community, and so what school districts do, good and bad, they spread it around to all of the schools. So when they're finished, it looks like none of them have been touched. Taylor was in that space at that time where the district took that bond and they spread it around the district. And at that time when they was done, none of the schools looked like they had been touched, because it's a smart thing to do for voters, because everybody votes for that bond. So the neighbors across from every school needs to see work going on. So it's smart to do that. But what we do badly, when we're done, nothing looks like it's been touched. And so that's why I like what the school did, the district did with the $46 million. We know that 3 schools were touched. It's apparent. Now we got to go make the other 2 look like they've been touched.
Yeah, very well put.
Well, I'm looking forward to hear about. I said I'm looking forward to hearing how our budget and everything is next month, so that way we can address some of these issues and maybe get a plan updated for the next 5 years.
Prioritize.
Yes, prioritize.
Mr. Raven?
Just a little bit more history on Taylor. After Glenwood was completed, there were 2 new wings placed in Taylor, but they were obscured by the by the multi-purpose cafeteria area and the wing of classrooms that are facing the street. So there was 2 wings placed in there after Glenwood, but people didn't really know about it because what you see is that was all hidden by what you see on the outside.
You're right.
Thank you. And I'm not done until you guys done. This is your workshop. But Miss Divine does have some good news that she needs to tell everyone.
Oh, about her oldest?
So I am sharing very, very exciting news. My oldest son does not graduate Chico State till next June. However, he was offered a job after an internship this summer with Workday, and he will be starting next September with an amazing pay and moving bonus. And I'm just very proud of him. So
The power of education.
yes, the power of education. Graduating from Chico State from a full ride based on grades.
Wildcats.
Yes.
So I just want to thank everyone. You know, like I said, this is our first step of sharing the information. And then, as I said, you know, once we get the unaudited actuals, we will continue to have workshops out so we can have a conversation and devise a plan so you guys can let me know what I need to do.
Before we wrap up, I want to make sure, because it wasn't really like a normal board meeting where we have like an opportunity for people to comment on different things. And I just want to know if there was anybody who wanted to speak to, just kind of in general, anything related to facilities or anything that we discussed tonight before we wrapped up.
And I always check to see if there's something online.
Yeah.
So.
I'll comment on it.
Okay. No comments?
Thank you for this conversation.
Yes.
I always appreciate when I walk away learning a little bit more, being more knowledgeable. I don't like feeling like it's a problem that I need to solve and I'm not quite sure how to do it. Like that part feels a little bit, overwhelming. But I do appreciate the learning, so thank you for that.
Well, that's why we get the big bucks.
I must say, I really enjoyed this and this style. We got to spend a lot of time on a very important issue. And I feel like I am very well prepared and have a lot of ideas in my head for where we need to be in the future.
And when we decided to go to the 2 board meetings a month, the desire was to be able to do more of this, to be able to have these sorts of conversations, to be able to have some back and forth, learn a little more about various different things. Today was facilities, and I'm looking forward to more of these in other areas going forward.
And I want to thank everybody in the audience who joined in and asked questions. Thank you very much for keeping the conversation going and letting us know what was important to you, so that way we could address that as well.
And feel free, you guys know how to reach us. So if there's anything that you want to share that either you didn't share tonight or might come up later, please feel free to reach out to us. And with that, we are adjourned. Are there any board member requests for future agenda items?
Yes, I would like an update on the safety protocols for all of our schools. All I've heard since I've been here, I've been on the board for almost 4 years now, and all I've really heard for safety-wise is about the COVID protocols, and I would like to know what other protocols we have in place for general safety for all of our students.
Trustee Hamilton start. Trustee Barnes. Trustee Cardona. And I have nothing. So with that, now we are adjourned.